If you have not joined the Makers Club, let me tell you what the Makers Club is. 3,000 creatives that are a part of not just the Patreon, but also the Discord. We have tons of crazy talented people who constantly drop insane fire. And if you want to be able to cook up, create, make stuff, highly suggest you to cop a sample pack or cop something from my store, whether it be merch, whether it be clothes, whether it be music, whatever. Like, cop something. You will receive an email to your email of like the dopest community of creating and cooking up. Like, I guarantee you're gonna walk away with like some form of inspiration. So I just wanted to say that, and let's get back to it. So let me tell you about my day and the thoughts that I had for today. Today, in a very like, not kind of like telling all my business, but kind of like revealing some things that made me think about the last one? Oh, that last one was AI generated. I'll talk about that later. But this track, I made this on the Twitch stream. Basically today I decided to start my day early, right? I woke up a little bit around like 6:15. I couldn't go back to sleep. Whenever I find that I can't go back to sleep, I'm waking up extremely early, and it usually intends that there's something that I need to be aware of. I've always had these feelings, and I don't know if anybody else relates, but do you guys ever find yourself randomly waking up extremely early before you need to wake up, and it's like something kind of forces you to stay up? You know what I'm saying? I had one of those mornings, and periodically, so I've been doing that. I've been having that experience since I got back home. But I woke up around like 6:15, 6 o'clock this morning, and I prayed. I had my usual start to the day, and I had an experience today that kind of made me question. I want to say it made me question internally the thoughts about creatives, right? Like, as a creative, the things that we think about on a daily basis and the things that put us in the space for whatever we're going to experience. And I'll explain what this is as I continue to elaborate about my day. But I remember going for a walk today, and I remember having a conversation earlier, and for whatever reason, something about that conversation that I had with a friend of mine played over and over and over in my mind, because the way that the conversation ended was not something that was like lucrative. Like, when you communicate with someone and then somehow like someone says something and you're like, wait, that came off in a way of like, are you upset? Are you, did something that I say anger you, right? And so I had one of those moments today, and it was just something I was playing over and over and over in my mind about like, how could I have handled that conversation differently? Could I have communicated it a different way? And it made me ultimately think about this crazy thought that made me realize this is a concept that I think as creatives, and we've been talking about this idea of what are we creating? What are we making? What are we doing? And so the idea of a God idea, right? What makes something a good idea and a God idea? And something that also made me think about like, what makes someone think that an idea that they have is not good enough, right? And Jay Blaze says, dang, Kaelin, I ain't call nobody beat whack. Nobody's beat is whack. To me, I don't ever judge people's music like, yo, it's whack, it's not. It's like I see where I've always looked at things that are created as there's something that can be done to always be better. But I'm never gonna call something outright bad. If you took time out of your day to make something, the last thing I'm gonna do is call it whack. So, but back to the story. I had this thought today while I was walking around the lake, and it made me think about what thing prohibits us from graduating to the next step that what we have made is good. And one of those things, I'll be honest, I realize creatively sometimes whenever I'm making something, there's this weird kind of thought or this weird kind of senses. For every great idea that I have, there's always some sort of opposing force that tells me that what I am doing isn't necessarily good enough. And it doesn't usually happen all the time. It's like I'll have like the greatest moment ever where I'm making something. And to be vulnerable with you guys, there was a moment today where I was like, did what I make or what I said or what I did, was it good enough? Did it suffice? So it started like making me question a lot. And one of the things that I realized about this loop, I was caught in this loop that was making me replay this conversation, this thought. It went from like, did the conversation go well to did what I make, was it good enough? Was it right enough? And I realized something. This is what I realized. As a creator, there's always going to be a opposite thing attached to a positive thing that you're doing, especially when you're doing things that you're supposed to be doing. For instance, that beat video that I just showed you guys 30 minutes ago, I made that track in maybe 45 minutes tops. I started with the chords, I had the drums. By the way, I have brand new drums I'm working on, by the way, so that's a whole nother conversation. But I sat and I made something that made me feel like I was tapped back into the creativity that I've felt God called me for. And then for a split moment, I allowed something to come in and make me think that what I did was not good enough. And here's something crazy that I started to piece together. I often don't talk about this. I always talk about God. I always talk about Jesus and talk about the scriptures and whatnot. But something that kind of clicked to me today was that if you got God, there's always going to be that opposing force or that opposing thing that does not birth life, right? And so the opposing force that I'm talking about, you can call it whatever you want. There was this creative book, The Creative's Way, or A Creative Way, or The Creative Way, was a book that was written from an author from New Mexico. And they were talking about the artist's way. That's what it was, the artist's way. And they were talking about how as a creator and as we create, there's this thing called a censor. In other contexts, like the Bible considers it the devil. But in the book, they called the censor like the serpent, or like the censor, the thing that doesn't want what you know to have full creative ability in life. And something that kind of like broke my brain is the way the devil works. And I'm going to use that as like, you can fill in whatever blank you want. However the devil works is the devil knows that they don't have like the power in the situation. And so if they're aware that you are constantly moving and they can't control like how God can, what they can do is throw you into loops that keep you running a repeated thought on cycle. So the difference between being in motion, well, not the difference, the opposite of being in motion is to not being motion. And you can be in motion, but here's the problem. If you find yourself in a cycle and you're constantly moving in a circle and there's no gradual There's no gradual up. The whole purpose of how the devil works is to simply throw you in a cycle that doesn't allow you to grow. And what's crazy is I found in my mind today where I was like running through a legit cycle of my own choices. And I didn't progress anywhere. This lasted for approximately an hour. And so I was literally just like walking around trying to like play out in my mind, why didn't something turn out the way it did? You know, like why did the outcome of this situation turn out the way it did? It's because I allowed my frustration of not understanding to put me in a repetitive loop, in a repetitive cycle. And it's so crazy to realize the devil he's not going to chase you with a red face, horns, and a tail. I think that's the biggest misconception that people have always had about the adversary. But creatively, think about how insane that is. The devil knows he's not going to be able to like physically scare you. So what's more scarier than being in a repetitive loop that you can't get out of? And how many times have we been in repetitive loops, bro? Judah said only an hour. Man, I be in that loop sometimes for weeks. Now, here's the craziest part. The only way to be able to get out of that loop is, for one, realize how much power you have. Realize as a creative, we have so much power in that situation. And what's so crazy is I remember having a moment today where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna turn off my phone. I'm gonna turn off my computers. I'm purely just gonna go drive to the restaurant and get something to eat. And as I allowed my phone to sit here for what felt like an hour, I was driving and I just started reconfirming the truth about my situation, the truth about my life, the truth about my feelings, the truth about the truth about the Makers Club, the truth about what I do, the truth about who I am as a person, what I believe, how I stand on what I believe. And I don't change it for nobody. Having that moment and driving to get food, something hit me where I was like, bro, what this is overthinking. This is genuinely overthinking. And if you allow overthinking and comparisons and things to be able to get in the way of how your motion is, man's definitely went to Burger King. No, I didn't. I got a poke bowl and I also had I got a side of mustard for a separate meal, but I got a poke bowl. That was not Burger King, okay? I refuse to go down that route again. I'm not doing Burger King. God bless Burger King, but no. But essentially, I went to go get food and I just realized I'm overthinking this situation. My brain was really telling me that you are terrible, you are this, you are that. And then I just started I was like, you know what? I know scriptures. What do I know to be true? I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. And I just kept reminding myself that the way I am is perfect. Not perfect because the world, quote unquote, says so, because God says so. And as I kept repeating those affirmations to me that I'm more than enough, I realized as I was headed there, my brain was creating something that did not even exist. I'm the head, not the tail. I'm above, not beneath. You know what I'm saying? Sento knows. But I was basically reciting those things. And as I did, I started remembering who I was. And when I started to remember, I felt a headache slowly kind of like, because this is a muscle. The headache was slowly starting to, I was slowly starting to reassure in my mind who I was, what God basically made me to be. I reminded myself of who I was. And when I did, I started finding the whole planet kind of like light up a little bit, you know? And so, I really was overthinking. I was really overthinking today. And what's so crazy is when I got back home after getting my meal, I actually bought a cookie. I bought a crazy jumbo cookie from Publix. Shout out to Publix. Yeah, so I as I was like coming back, I ate the cookie, ate the poke bowl, and I checked the text message from the friend that I was talking to. And I was like, yo, I appreciate the conversation we had. You know, do you feel any kind of way, da-da-da? And they're like, nah, apologize if it came off that way, but no, I'm not mad. Why would I be mad? And that was the craziest thing, because as I'm driving back, the thought of what if I'm blowing this all out of proportion? And I realized, bro, I was such on an overthinking frenzy this morning. And thanks be to God, I would like to thank God. Thanks be to God that I managed to be able to catch myself in that loop. Matthew, Are You Serious says, it makes me question, do we become our own adversaries? It's actually fascinating to see, because I think we underestimate how the mind works. And think about how crazy this is. And if this makes sense, let me know. But I think genuinely overthinking is one form of keeping somebody in a repetitive loop. And the one thing about a repetitive loop is there's patterns. Now, I could go into the theory, okay? I have a theory about this. And the theory is this. You know how they say, like, the adversary, Lucifer, right? Lucifer, the devil. He was once a musician. He was a creative. And he was fearfully and wonderfully made. His body was made of like precious rubies and diamonds. And so at some point in the middle of it, which kind of gave me crazy surprise, I started learning that angels actually have choices. Angels can make their own choices. And so nonetheless, Lucifer made a decision, decided to like overthrow God, and God didn't like that. So because of that, God was like, you know what? I'm gonna just make a spot for you. So whoever want to go with you, and I don't even want to make this place for anybody else, okay? But I'm gonna make it specifically for you because you think you cool. You think you're trying to overthrow me and what I created. Like, you crazy to think you about to overthrow what I made me out of here. You're crazy. And so if that's the case, and he ended up going into that dark pit, he's a musician. He played music over and over again. Do you think that his ability is understanding how patterns work, not just with music, but understanding that patterns exist within people? So if he knows patterns exist with people, what he's gonna do is he's gonna take one little thing like overthinking and make people just stay in that constant loop for as long as possible. Because the whole point of the enemy is to steal, kill, and destroy, right? So if the whole point of the enemy is to steal, kill, and destroy, easily he'll make you your worst enemy. We don't want to give him that amount of power. You know? I gave you this gift of trying to turn against me. Like, and think about how beautiful that is. Like, having that ability to be like, yo, we out here. We like in a beautiful heavens, God, angels, and all you gotta do is just play. Like, you ain't gotta deal with, like, there's no issues. All you had to do was one job, sir. But no. And because of that, because of that. Because of that exists. Because of that, the concept of it's you're just in a loop. He's like, I got caught in a loop. Now I'm about to make everybody become a part of that loop. That's genuinely a crazy thought. It just makes sense. Because what music is patterns. Whether you want to recognize it or not, music is patterns. And what greater person who understands patterns knows how to take people who have the ability to play that pattern, or have the ability to draw, or have that ability to film, or have that ability to act or sing or rap or whatever. All they gotta do, all he really does is just magnify at least a thought that something is wrong with that person. Genuinely, how crazy that is like, that's mind-boggling to me, bro. It's just mind-boggling to me. And so whenever I hear about the concept of like, overthinking and whatnot, it's just one of those things. And sometimes it's not even just those things, but it could start as small as a thought. Something as small as you can make like the greatest beat ever. And this is coming from my own personal experience. You can make the greatest beat ever. And then somewhere in the middle of it, the music stops. You've bounced out the video. And then something just goes, that ain't gonna do that well. And you're like, I can't believe that. I refuse to believe that. I can't give any power to that voice. And it's crazy to think about it. It's crazy to think about, but that does happen. I think all creatives have dealt with that adversary conversation before, which is why I talk about it. So the only way to be able to rid ourselves of things that don't serve us, the things that don't help us, is simply to just remind ourselves of what the truth of the matter is. Truth is, I'm really talented at what I do. And when I put my mind to whatever I do, I know God is gonna use it. And I'm confident in that. Even if it don't happen for one track, it's gonna happen for the next one. And Glassfriend said, I heard recently that worrying is like worshiping the problem. That kind of stuck with me. Yeah, bro. And you know something? I think that's the one thing that I want to be able to remind you guys of, especially when it comes to the stream, because when we make music here, it's not to appease the greater abroad audience that's beyond the stream, or the greater beyond audience that's beyond how we function as creatives. When we come here, this is a pure place to simply grow in what you do. Everything about the Makers Club, especially when I go live on the stream, is simply to try things out, learn and grow. And somehow, in some way, if we can tell a great story, that alone is a superpower. That alone is the thing, Crash X Fleet says, sometimes you can't control worrying. I know I can't most times. And you know what? I think that's one of the things about creating, that it shouldn't be that. It's like, if you know this is what you want, then you should just communicate it, or you learn how to communicate it and then you do it. Think about how crazy that is. Let's even go back to Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was that form, and there was darkness upon the face of the deep. Then all of a sudden, God said, let there be light. So if you were to think about your own creativity, right, as a creator, there's nothing that can literally get in the way of you having your form of the void and darkness upon the face of the deep. And then there's light. All the pieces you need are already there. All you need to do is just have a let there be light moment. Or if you don't have that, you're putting all the pieces in place. Now, here's a genuine question. Think about it from this perspective. You are a creator creating your own world, right? What gets in the way of stopping someone from let there be light? Unless we put it there, unless we put that thing there, nothing can stop us from having a let there be light moment. No matter what you want to make. Literally, you got all the pieces in the right spot. Everything is right there. And then all of a sudden, boom, let there be light. Unless you put it there, nothing, and I mean nothing can get in the way of stopping what you want to make. That's why one of the questions I always ask whenever I collaborate with people, what do you feel like saying right now? And sometimes it takes some time, but knowing that something is there, it just doesn't have a form. It's just a little bit of a void at the moment, but you know it exists. Maybe it takes time to just form that shape a little bit, and then boom, there it goes. There's a circle with 4 triangles, a indent square, and a rectangle at the bottom left of the circle. You know what I'm saying? Like, it requires being able to take what you know and place it in the spots. If anything that does not deal with creating a thing, if there's nothing in the way, nothing should stop you from making whatever you want to make, bro. And that's genuinely how I feel. And so to go back to today's story, I had that moment, I had that conversation, I reaffirmed to myself, and quite frankly, my brain is very tired right now. But you know what? I'm glad I had that experience, because now I know the next time I have that feeling again, I know what to do. And we often forget that experience and that feeling, and oh man, like, I don't want to know what it feels like to have that feeling again. Well, maybe you do. And I say that because if you got out of it and you got through it, then you know how to handle it. If you're aware of how to face a problem, you will always know how to handle it. Judah said there's so much to make. There's so much to make. And I think as creatives, we create way more than we realize. We create music. We create problem-solving ideas. Why do you think people talk about codes? Why do you think people talk about like, oh, presets, codes, formulas? Whenever you make a beat, what sounds work whenever you try and make a house beat? Ciano is a great example of this. He has a formula that works. And if that formula works, then no matter what you want to solve, there's formulas for every single thing that is a problem. We're the creators, bro. We're the makers. We literally are the people that solve problems. Algorithms. Like, whatever it is, we have the ability, we have the capability to solve whatever we want. If you're breathing, if you're watching this, we have the tools. And no matter what happens at the end, whatever the ending result is, just know it was perfect, perfectly designed. You are perfectly designed. And don't forget that, okay? So that's my story for today. I hope all that makes sense.